Well, the US presidential race has kind of officially now finally got underway. Not directly of Democrat versus Republican or people electing the president. Americans do this weird thing called a primary process where there's effectively direct election of what the candidate is going to be for the Republican and Democrat parties, respectively. Yesterday, we saw a resounding result in favour of Donald Trump. He's taken a resounding lead in the fight to become the Republican, the GOP nominee. Here to help us understand what this means, what are the implications, what's going to happen from here is our North America correspondent, Julie Hartman. Julie, thank you so much for joining us.
Hofer, thanks so much for having me. And we know the process is weird. And let me tell you, a lot of Americans don't quite understand it either.
I'm glad to hear you say that because I was going to say, look, you guys, you're a bit weird over there. Like some of the stuff that goes on. So talk us through what are they actually fighting over at the moment? Because they're not fighting over the presidency.
Well, they actually are. So right now, they meaning the Republicans are fighting for who will be the nominee in the Republican Party for president of the United States. So the way our political system works is that you have two nominees from the two major political parties, the Democrat and Republican Party. Sometimes, actually, quite frequently, there are third party candidates, but those are the main two. That's the showdown between those two. And so right now, Nikki Haley, Vivek Ramaswamy, Ron DeSantis, and Donald Trump were vying to get that nominee to be the GOP nominee. And so Iowa is the first race, if you will, and they go to all of these states and they vote and they're allocated a certain number of delegates. But just to make it less complicated, Donald Trump's going to be the nominee. That's all you really need to know.
we can cut to the chase. You don't need to be worried about it. Look, the Donald Trump steamroller is definitely underway, and I think that was fairly obvious from a little while ago. I will say my wife and I were in the US in 2016 before the 2016 elections, and we came home and told anyone who would listen that Donald Trump was going to win. It was very, very obvious when you were on the ground in the US that he was going to win that election. I will say it also seemed very obvious to me that he was going to win the 2020 election, but we better not say too much about that or YouTube is going to pull the video. However, it does seem that he's going to be the nominee for the Republican Party this year. Where does that leave these others? You know, you mentioned Nikki Haley, Vivek Ramaswamy, Ron DeSantis. Given the strength of this lead, correct me if I'm wrong, this is a record-breaking lead for any candidate in a GOP primary in Iowa. Where does that leave the others?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we all thought that Trump was going to win in Iowa, but this just was stunning, really a stunning victory to your point. As far as where it leaves the others, I think Vivek Ramaswamy has a long career in politics. He's only 38 years old, and he ran, I think, one of the most impressive presidential campaigns that we've ever seen in American history.
Wow.
Trust me, mark my words. He's not going anywhere. Nikki Haley, I do think her star is fading. I don't see a long career for her in politics. Some people say this as a diss to Nikki Haley. I'm honestly, I'm really just being earnest saying this. I think she'll go on some board of a corporation. I don't really think that she'll have longevity. And I think Ron DeSantis, he is a beloved governor of Florida. He's done a fantastic job. And so I also see a future for him too, which is exciting for those of us who are Republicans, because we have some other rising stars in our party. It's not just all about Trump.
There's some quality and there's some depth there. Now, Vivek Ramaswamy came fourth out of those four candidates that we're talking about and immediately suspended his campaign and is in fact going into New Hampshire alongside Donald Trump and calling on his supporters to throw their weight behind Donald Trump. There's a question of who the presidential nominee is going to be. There's also the question of what vice president is that presidential nominee going to pick to run alongside. Do you think Vivek is trying to get an early ticket into that VP position?
Perhaps he may be trying, although I could be wrong on this. I don't think that President Trump will pick Vivek as his VP, even though Vivek is more than qualified. I think he would be an excellent leader. I think he would have been an excellent president. But I think that Trump is going to choose someone on his ticket who maybe isn't so much like him. I mean, certainly he wants to pick someone who shares his values and his policy positions, but people are calling Vivek Trump 2.0 because he's very direct. He's sometimes can be rather too direct, can be bombastic, a bit like Trump. So for some reason, I think that he's going to steer away from Vivek. However, again, Vivek has a long career ahead of him in politics, and I wouldn't be shocked if he were in some cabinet or advisory role to President Trump.
Well, it's worth keeping in mind, typically US presidents that do successfully get elected are not competing in their first election, at least not as far as the primaries are concerned. They will go through that primary process usually a couple of times before they finally come out as the nominee. Trump was an exception to that, but exceptions to that tend to be very rare. So to what degree do you think someone like a Ron DeSantis now, he came second, of course, in Iowa, and it was a decent showing, but just nothing compared to the juggernaut that was Donald Trump's results. To what degree do you think he's simply maintaining his run as almost practice for the next time around? And to what degree do you really believe that he thinks he could reel this in and become the nominee?
Oh, I think it's what you just said. I think that he is teeing himself up to be the successor, because what Vivek Ramaswamy and Ron DeSantis understand is that for some reason or another, Donald Trump is not going to last beyond 2028. Let's say he's elected in 2024. But he may, I mean, God forbid, something may happen. I mean, he may, there's always an October surprise, Topher, here in the United States. Remember that the biggest issue of the 2020 election, COVID, didn't happen until March of that year. So I think that they both understand that the Trump moment, for, again, any number of reasons, will eventually fade, and they are trying to position themselves as carrying on the torch.
It certainly looks that way, and as you said earlier, it's wonderful to see a bit of depth there. It's quite exciting to see that where only a few election cycles ago we were talking about people like Jeb Bush, now we're talking about people like Vivek Ramaswamy. What does that say about the public appetite, the public attitudes? Is this being driven by the GOP recognising the direction that it should go in, or is this being driven by the public demand for better quality of leadership?
Oh, I think it is the latter. I think that many people are actually saying that the GOP, which is right now headed by Ronna McDaniel, does not take kindly to outsiders like Trump or Vivek, would rather go with more establishment leaders. I think what is happening is that the American people are seeing that the system as existed is not working for them. Many people refer to what's called the uni party. That is, there isn't a Democrat and Republican opposition, but that they're all kind of the same people, but just have different labels. And I think that there has been evidence that that is true. I mean, under past Republican administrations, we have seen that they have allowed, and even at times given credence to, wokeism infiltrating into our institutions. We have seen that some Republican leaders have not been as strong as many conservatives claim they are on issues such as the border. So I think that Donald Trump has revolutionized Republican politics permanently. He has made it America first and populist. And actually, I think he's kind of gone back to what the Republican Party was in the Reagan era.
Well, it's certainly going to be very interesting. Who the US president has repercussions right around the world. So it's a relevant issue even for us here in Australia. We're going to stay on top of it. Thank you so much, Julie Hartman, for joining us here at the Aussie Wire.
Thank you, Topher.